developed a specially designed high cash value life insurance policy.
Finding the same flow state that an owner can get inside of their business and trying to replicate that with your employees.
If you think of it at that aspect, I would give you $200 every minute, every second of the day.
Most entrepreneurs are trains with no off switch.
Obviously they say they want to make more money, but why? Why do you want to make more money?
I hate one-to-many, but one-to-one, amazing. Welcome to another podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Scott Wilson, the owner of so many things. We're going to figure out about all of them today. So Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it, man.
All right, so that first question, what's like all of your revenue streams?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. There's a lot. So my main thing is the gym. So Results by Design Fitness. We are a personal training studio in Middletown area. Been in business for over 15 years, and we help adults 40 plus, fit in fitness in their busy life so they can live their best life. And so that's one of the things. Been doing that for 15 years. Got into real estate, gotten into life insurance, gotten into the car business, all kind of little different revenue streams. And a lot of that happened around COVID, right? It kind of made it a necessity because when, the government comes in and shuts you down, you have to figure out other ways to earn a living, take care of your family.
And with that, let's rank them. Let's say you have all your revenue streams right now. What's number one and what's, number six, however many streams there are?
Yeah, so number one is hands down the gym. That's my main bread and butter. It's what we do. It's what I've done for the last 15 years at Results by Design, but it's what I've done since I've been out of school, 20 plus years of doing that. After that, we go probably more into the real estate, then into the car business, and then the last one would be life insurance. That's kind of something I've picked up because I love the infinite banking concept, but more I do it as a side project.
And you actually sold me my life insurance policy.
I did, yeah.
So let's go through a quick little breakdown of what is my policy, what were the details, if you remember them. I don't remember them, but go through the details real quick.
Yeah. So specific details, we developed a specially designed high cash value life insurance policy, specifically designed for you to kind of double dip or double use your dollar, so to speak. So cool thing about life insurance policies is that they create a death benefit. They create tax-free growth, but they also allow you to have that money liquid to utilize outside the policy while it's growing inside the policy so that you can kind of double dip on that dollar. And what people do with that policy outside of the policy, varies from real estate to crypto to investing in other businesses to whatever that may be.
And so for example, my statistics are, it was like $500 a month put into the policy. I think in like 20 years, it'll be like worth $500,000 or 30 years or something. I don't know how that worked.
Yeah, I can't remember those specifics exactly. I know we
death
did.
Benefit was $500,000.
Yeah, death benefits, probably $500,000 and stuff like that. Yeah, I think we're putting in about $6,000 a year on your policy, so $500 a month. And, that grows. The first years are the worst years when it comes to insurance. There are some insurance costs and stuff like that. So that will get a lot of people, kind of bit out of shape. But when you look at it as the long-term thought process, you really start to see that compounding interest take off. And you wind up seeing, I think I remember, I'm trying to remember exactly. 10 years in, I think you would have invested like $6,000 in, and now it's worth almost $70,000. Type thing. So it's not an investment strategy. It's a holding strategy, right? It's where you store your wealth to go out and utilize it. It's not an investment. Legally, it's not an investment.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And it's funny when I figured out that most financial advisors are really just life insurance. People just sell life insurance. And it kind of funnels into that.
A lot of them are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, they really are. Yeah.
And I had no idea that was a whole, because you get into these different levels of wealth and, moving money around. It's all about just moving money around at the end of the day to like avoid taxes and everything in that front. Right. So with that, and let me see if I'm right here, the, $600, $500 I put in a month, that accrues at a 6%, right? Because we got a whole life, which is a fixed.
Correct.
And that's untapped by market. And actually tell us about the Great Depression and how life insurance policies paid out.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you brought that up. So right now, I know Penn Mutual is paying out a 6% dividend. Now, that's not an actual internal rate of return because there's still some cost and fees and stuff like that. I think we normally see about an average growth of 4.5% over the course of years. Now, the interesting thing I told you about, and I always tell everybody about with life insurance, is that these companies have been around for 140 plus years. When we went through the Great Depression, the Great Recession, and we saw these banks and everything failing, who didn't fail? Life insurance companies. during the Great Depression, life insurance companies were the entities that were bailing the banks out. And of course, in a Great Recession, or in 08, 010, I think that was called the Great Recession. That was when the government came in and bailed them out. But life insurance companies they've stood the test of time. Penn Mutual, for example, they've paid out a dividend for, I'd have to look it up to be exactly sure, but it's 140 plus straight years. Right? So, they've stood the test of time.
Yeah. It honestly seems like a safer way to hold money than banks sometimes, because of, that has outlasted, the Great Depression wiped all the banks.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's exactly what a properly designed whole life policy is. It's a storage of wealth. It's where I store my savings. It's where I store large purchases. If I know I'm going to have a tax bill, I'm going to funnel that money through a policy and then borrow from it so they can be accruing and accumulating over there before I pay my tax bill. So there's a lot of different strategies in that arena.
And what got you interested in that whole world of things?
Man, I purchased my first policy in 2013. And my first policy was an Index Universal Life, and it was specifically designed for retirement. But I remember talking with a friend that sold me this policy, Roger Short, who is a dear, dear friend, super close, very successful in the insurance world. But he sold me a policy here and started telling me about the policy before I even knew Roger. And he was like, hey, there's this place that it can grow tax-free, right? There's no limit on how much you can put on it, like a Roth IRA. It has a death benefit. You can access this money anytime you want to without penalty. It seems too good to be true, right? It doesn't make sense. So at first I was like, hey, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So I started reading. I remember one of the first books I read was called Tax-Free Retirement by Patrick Kelly. Mm-hmm. And Patrick Kelly kind of compared the Roth IRA versus the Index Universal Life. And the Roth is wonderful. Like, I tell people to max them out. However, that money is untouchable until 59 and a half without penalty and, later. But with IUL, there's no limits. And I can access it anytime I want. The cool thing about IULs is that there's no loss, right? Zero is your hero, so there's a floor. It can't lose except for insurance costs. And it also mirrors the market. It's not in the market, but it's indexed against the market. So IULs, whereas a fixed whole life, may grow 4.5% to 6% in a year, IUL can grow 9, 10, 11, 12%. However, there are down years where it may not grow at all, but it doesn't lose. Mm-hmm. So that was my first introduction and kind of got me into it. I was like, hey, I purchased that policy. I had probably had it for about 5 or 6 years, and I used it the very first time to do a house flip. Mm. I pulled that money out and used that for all the repairs on the house. My buddy and I, we went to the bank and got money to borrowed money to purchase the house, but then we needed money to rehab the house. And I used that policy for the first time, and it opened my eyes. I was like, okay, now I get it. Now I get this whole infinite banking concept and what it looks like. And from that point on, I was like, I need to understand more. Right. So went and studied, got my life insurance license, started taking some different side courses and continuing education courses around the whole policy design and info. And, I'm by no means an expert, right? There's a lot of people out there that are way smarter than me, can teach it a lot better than me. But I've got a pretty good grasp on it. And it's definitely the strategy I use for my family.
Yeah. And I learned about it from Jason. Jason's one of your good buddies. Mm-hmm. And he has 8 policies. It's funny, people just keep racking up all the policies, which is fun.
Yeah.
And they just keep scaling. So every time I talk to someone now, I'm like, do you have a life insurance policy? Mm-hmm. And whenever I find out about something I like, get really excited, and I tell everyone about it, and they're like, Cameron, shut up, please. I'm like, no, you need to try this.
Well, it's funny, life insurance policies, especially infinite banking concepts, it's a lot like CrossFit. Right. People, once they kind of learn about it and they start falling in love with it, they won't shut up about it. Yep. Right. Yep. So I totally get it. But you mentioned Jason, and Jason actually just a few years ago kind of renewed my love for it because of a strategy and stuff that we learned a few years ago that was really cool. And so I loved talking with Jason about it as well. Yeah,
it's really cool. So something I do want to bring up that was really interesting. You got to spend a weekend with Russell Brunson recently, and he's worth how much? So,
brother, I have no idea. I saw an Instagram.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, easy. I saw an Instagram reel where some kid, I think it was like a 7-year-old kid at one of his conferences, asked him how much he makes an hour.
It was like 15,000 something. Yeah, he did the math in his head.
Yeah, he's like roughly 15,000, give or take, an hour. I'm like, wow. But yeah, man, I am a part of a mastermind group called Iron Circle. which is the top 1%, maybe top 0.5% gym owners in the country. Tim Lyons has put this mastermind together and brought all these fitness professionals, these gym owners in, and really expanded our horizon. We're all were really good at operating in the gym, but it was like, what's next? How do we create that legacy wealth? And Tim has done a great job of bringing in outsiders of the industry, marketing, business owners, billionaires, Jeff Hoffman, for example, with Priceline.com, and just all of these big name people to teach us how to be the best gym owners we can be. With that said, it doesn't just stop there. It carries over into every aspect of business, right? Business is business, no matter the vehicle that you're using for it. Mm-hmm. So all the principles hold true. So back in October, I got to spend a weekend with Russell Brunson. Yeah. So in at a pirate house, yep. So Russell is such a awesome dude and such a great dude, family man. I mean, he brought his wife, 2 kids to this place with him. You don't see that with a lot of big name people. It was so cool to watch him interact with them and hang out with his kids and stuff. But then, man, that Saturday when he spoke, he spoke to us for, 6.5, 8 hours and just kind of laid out and really went over his Expert Secrets book. If you've ever read any of his books, so he's got one called Expert Secrets where he talks about the selling one-to-many. It's all about creating webinar and stuff mm-hmm. like that, and really broke that down and talked about how we could utilize it, not necessarily in our gyms, but maybe in different avenues, a little more online and different stuff like that. But it's a fantastic opportunity to, just to meet and, rub shoulders with people like that.
Yeah. What do you think was probably the number one thing you learned from listening to Russell Brunson?
Man, so many. I think the biggest thing, it was a reminder, was, especially from a business perspective when it talks about sales, Russell holds the Guinness Book of World Records for selling from stage. And I don't remember these numbers exactly. People out there can look them up, but I'm pretty sure he did like $9 million in 90 minutes, or maybe it was $3 million in 90 minutes from stage at a Grant Cardone event. Mm. So his whole philosophy is selling one to many. In the fitness industry, obviously we do personal training, so it's a little bit unique. You've got to sit down with people and you got to get to know them and create a relationship. But in the business world, in the selling world, on the online world, right? Webinars and different avenues to get in front of as many people as possible. Even if your close rate goes down, if your close rate is 50% when you're setting in front of 100 people versus 80% when it's just one, that 50% in front of 100 people always wins. He's always going to outsell people. And that was Russell's big take. Now, obviously, he shared a lot of the what and the how to do that, how to break down the hook, the story, and the offer, and how he goes through and navigates objections and internal and external objections all in that webinar. And the other thing that I learned from him too is that, man, he wasn't great when he started, right? So it's a learnable thing. And there's so many people that have taken his teachings and have exploded by just following what he said.
Yeah. It's always fun when you get in the rooms with really mm-hmm. successful people and you're like, oh, you're not that smart. Like they don't have something you don't have.
Right.
They just put in some extra work and, they just tried.
Man, he did. And he showed us a video of his very first presentation. He tried to create ClickFunnels 2 or 3 other times before it finally took off. And he showed a presentation that he did, one of the very first ones he ever did. And if you saw that and you didn't know, you'd be like, there's no way that's Russell Brunson. And first of all, there's no way I'm buying anything from that guy, right? But now you hear him and he is, as polished as can be. And it's interesting though, he told us that day is that he loves to sell one to many. He loves it. He thrives off of it. Says he's terrified to sell one to one. Terrified. It's not his personality, right? He's kind of a little bit introverted.
Yeah, that's a big thing. The self-awareness of what kind of salesman you are.
Yeah.
I hate one-to-many, but one-to-one, amazing. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm like, okay, we can really drive the conversation. Yeah. But if it's a lot of people, there's too many inputs and you got to think about other objections. I'm like, I'm going to deal with one person and their thoughts and give full attention there. But it takes self-awareness to understand okay, this isn't for me.
It does. 100%. And I think that's, I know we hadn't had this question, but I think that's where mentors come in, and it's getting in those rooms and then getting around people that you trust, that have kind of been there, done that, still doing it and kind of following along in their footsteps. Obviously putting your own spin and twist on it, but there's frameworks laid out there of people that have been successful, especially in this day and age with the internet and AI and everything. Anybody can learn anything that's ever existed, right? You just have to be willing to put in the time to do it and realize that you're not going to be great at it at first.
Yeah, it's nothing if you're great at something, the first time you do it, you probably waited too long to even start doing it. And even then it's never going to be perfect.
Well, you're just staying in your comfort zone, right? You're just staying in your comfort zone. And that's one of the other guys that we got to listen to when we were out in, and the Pirate House in Vegas was Steven Kotler. And he talked about flow and talked about flow research in your brain. And he talked about like stretching yourself. 4% was the magic number. Like you needed to be 4% outside your ability. Everybody talks about 1% better. He's like 1% doesn't give your brain the creative juices that it needs to get into flow. And flow is a super technical term, and I won't even try to explain it on this podcast because it's not me. But man, Steven Kotler is a genius. Very interesting stuff, worth looking at. But 4%, he was like, that's where you want to push your skills to. Not 5, because then it's so hard you're going to give up. Not 2 or 3, because then you're going to be bored. 4 is like the magic.
Yeah, finding it's always hard. When you're an owner, you're just driven differently. And finding the same flow state that an owner can get inside of their business and trying to replicate that with your employees, I think is huge. Because I know for me personally, in the business that I've always owned, it's like there's the flow state of the owner. And it's almost like you see the whole business happening at once. There's like this orchestra happening. And then the employee side, they're like, oh, I just see my one thing happening. But if they could understand that state of like creativity, I mean, and business is creative. A lot of people don't like to say that or don't understand that. I'm like, no, you're a creative person if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner.
You have to be.
Have to be very creative.
Have to be. I think one of the things that I've learned, honestly, I've business for 15 years, but I've probably just kind of realized this in the last, 3 to 4 years, is that your team doesn't move at the same speed you do. And you have to be really careful as the owner when you bring in ideas, to make sure they have capacity to do not only their current roles, but add those things in. And, EOS, have you ever heard of EOS?
I have not yet.
It's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a whole concept created by Gino Wickman. He's written several books, Traction being the one that I would, probably recommend the first to kind of grasp onto. But he has created an operating system of how to run small businesses. Not everything from meetings to quarterly reviews to employee analyzers and all kinds of different stuff. And you can sit down and break down like who in your company is the visionary and then who is the integrator. And you got to have both of those people. And very rarely are they the same person. And there's that special person, that unicorn that can be both, but very rarely is it that. But when you're a visionary, like you got to be careful not to chase shiny objects, right? You got to keep the main thing. And it's easy to overwhelm. I used to do this all the time. I'd go to fitness conferences and I'd come back and, our clients would love it, right? You'd come back with all these new exercises. You want to implement them right away. But, when you're running with a team that's delivering a reproducible, scalable product, if they don't know what you're doing, and then they see the next time the client is in, they see that coach, and that coach is like, I'm not sure what that is. Your product is no longer the same. So in a business, that's not a great thing. So I was guilty of that many times, younger in my career. And I really, thankful, Matt, my business partner, was probably the opposite. He was probably a little slower. I'm a little faster. And it was kind of good that we could kind of pull each other, back to the center many, many times.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of being very energetic because same as you, I'll read a book, I'll listen to a webinar, watch a video, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do this right now. And I have a really short, I have an idea, I make it happen really, really quick.
Yeah.
It's not, reproducing ability to get your entire team on that. But there's a time where I'm like, hey guys, I found this new software that uses AI to analyze thumbnails and then we'll recreate it. We're doing this now for everybody. And they're like, what? And I'm like, do it. And they're like, we can't keep up.
Yeah.
And it's always funny because there's the part of me that's like, man, I love pushing people because I push myself.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how much can I really get you? And Alex Mosey made a funny video yesterday. He was like, man, I don't implement anything when my team's really, really tired and I can tell they're stressed. But But the second I see him smiling and be like, it's okay, I implement something new. And I was like, this is a fun way to think about it.
No, that's a great way. I mean, that's reading the room, right? And understanding your team. And I think, you're going to have different levels of players on your team, A players and B players. And, and I don't mean that B players are bad, because they're going to come in and they're going to eat broccoli every day. They're going to do all the basic things that have to happen in the business really, really well. And then you're going to have those A players that are going to do that also, but then they need the next thing to keep them going, right? And I think understanding and figuring that out with your team is important. You've met Ryan. We do the podcast together, and he's our director at the gym, and that dude is an absolute rock star. Loves what he does, very good at what he does, but he also needs a little, something, because he's so talented that he needs something else to go after, that keeps his creative juices flowing, because in his role at the gym and director, he's an implementer. He's doing the day-to-day stuff, coaching up the team, getting them ready to perform well, but he needs a little something and a little outlet to give him some creative juice as well. And I think when you understand your team, you'll understand, like, all right, I've got a really good idea. I know it's probably too much for everybody, but can I give it to this one person and see if we can refine it to make it scalable?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking of teams and, being a business owner, what percentage do you typically like to monitor? You're like, all right, I have cost of goods and then I have payroll. Where are you like, all right, if I see payroll getting above 30%, 40%, I'm like, let's not do it. Like, where's that number for you?
Yeah. So in the gym business, 30% is exactly what you just said. So we like to keep our payroll around 30% or less.
Okay. And you keep it around there. And then I take it's cost of goods. For owning a gym, what are the cost of goods like when it comes to expenses? Like, what are you guys normally expecting? Like, it's equipment breaks, rent, all this stuff.
Yeah. As far as like base operating, or are you saying like what are like actual like
base
items?
Operating?
Yeah. Base operating expenses, man, it just varies. I'd say in cost of goods, and the only reason with cost of goods, I'm thinking about like supplement sales and things like that. It just depends on how much we're ordering that month. But base operating expense for us, when we're including like salaries and everything, is probably roughly about $60,000 to $65,000 a month.
And that's probably what, another 30%, 40%?
Which part's that?
Out of the total revenue. So we're doing 30% for...
I'm sorry. Yes. So if you think of it that way, so if you just percentage-wise, so cost of goods, base operating expenses are probably, and I'm taking out salaries, it's probably about 50%.
Okay.
Roughly.
Got it.
So probably skewing towards 40. So probably like 40, 30, 30. So 40% operating expense, 30% payroll, 30% net owner benefits. It's kind of the goal.
Yeah, I've heard the rule about like 30, 30. So like 30 cost of goods, whatever, all that, and 30 payroll and 30.
And you could keep some back for capital expense. I think we keep like 5% back for capital expenses and stuff like that. You talked about equipment breaking. We just had an air conditioning go out at our gym. And, when you are the landlord, guess what? You have to pay for the air sheet.
Expensive, especially commercial ones.
Yeah, it's about $30K.
Yep.
About $30K. Yeah, so they are not cheap, and they go down out of the blue.
Yeah, they're rough. Okay, so let's get some value to other gym owners right now.
Yeah.
Where do you think are the top 5 things gym owners are doing wrong that if they fixed it, they could have a profitable business?
I think one, their product. Talking about the training, they are not delivering a consistent product. I think that is the most important thing, is that you're delivering a consistent product no matter who the client is training with, no matter what time of the day, they should be receiving the same thing. When you walk into our gym, we're creating a program for Cameron. Not what Scott thinks is fun, not what Matt wants to do that day or what Ryan wants to do that day. It's what Cameron needs to be successful to get him closer to his goals. On top of that, the energy that is brought. Our coaches, we have a standard session. We have an outline of what we call our SOP of the standard session. We know that we're saying people's names X amount of times. We know that we're bringing energy like one level above. Never too much, because if you got somebody come in that's down in the dumps and they're a 2 and you're a 10, you're going to push that person away. So I think being very consistent with the product, making sure that, one coach over here doesn't love to do Olympic lifting and this guy over here is all bands. Because that client's going to see this person over here and wonder why they're not doing that, right? So you need to have a consistent product. Number 2, the big one, and I know you're going to love, is gym owners specifically do not get the concept of marketing and that it has to be done consistently, all the time, day after day, month after month. It doesn't matter if people are flowing in or not flowing in. You got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. So those are kind of the first two that come to mind. 3 is creating systems, not just on the training floor, which is the main product, but also for everything else that happens in your business, right? If you ever want to be a gym owner, right, and not just create another job, you have to get the stuff out of your head. You have to get the way the day-to-day operations go out of your head so that you can bring in a teammate that can take those responsibilities over. And they need a document. They need instructions, man. They really do. I think, Rick Mayo, he owns Alloy franchise, Alloy personal training. He used to say from stage all the time, like one of the most important roles of him as the gym owner was a CRO, Chief Reminding Officer. And as the owner, that is my most important role, is to remind them every day. It's no different with our clients. They come in and eat protein. And the next day they come in, eat protein. The next day they come in, hey, what's protein? Oh, hey, we've talked about this, but you got to keep reminding them. Same thing with your staff and your team. We have some KPIs and different things. I know you mentioned wanting to talk about those, but we have some things that we track on a daily basis that, I'm always, they do a really good job of doing it, but I'm always reminding them, hey, still got to get these, still got to get these, still got to get these.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I mean, KPIs are, it's always funny. The amount of business owners, Jason didn't know what an SOP was until I talked to him.
Yeah.
Which was crazy because Jason's built big businesses. You think about all these business owners who have done a great job so far and don't even, Jason's also never marketed any of his businesses. This is the first time we ever ran ads for one of his businesses.
Right.
We got like 150 leads in, which was sick. But they don't do the basic things. I think a lot of them get scared because marketing is so like, you don't always get an immediate payoff. Yeah. It's like sometimes your payoff's 3 months later. It's a great payoff, but you had 3 months where you're like, I'm just throwing money in the dirt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's we did that early on. I remember getting into Facebook ads probably back, it's back when you were still a baby, probably when I was first doing Facebook ads. But I think the first time was probably in like 14 or 15. And in 14 or 15, dude, like when Facebook ads first took off, you could throw a $100 ad out there and get 100 people. It was crazy. It was crazy. And it was so easy. You could sell stuff through funnels and people would buy $79 21-day trials left and right all online. And then things kind of changed. And it got to where, we would stop because we'd get really busy, right? We'd get super busy. So we'd stop marketing because we couldn't onboard everybody. And then the next time you throw in $100, nothing happens. And the next time nothing happens, and the next time nothing happens. And it takes that consistency. People have to see you in the marketplace now, right? People understand, when it was new and it was shiny object and, it was easy to get people's attention on Facebook. It was easy just to throw a few bucks out. But now people need to see a consistent message in the marketplace so that they know that you're real, that you're not going anywhere, that, you got to create a little bit of trust and awareness, all of those things.
Yeah, that's huge. Marketing is never going to be as cheap as it is right now. It's only get more expensive to run ads, to create content, like all things. Even with AI coming around, it's like, people think, things are going to get cheaper. It's like, well, you guys to operate the AI, and that's tech. Normally tech jobs are really expensive. So man, I wish I was like old enough to be running ads at like 2014.
Yeah.
Because I would have done it.
Yeah.
Like I would have been so excited to run some ads and be like, oh my gosh, I can put like $1,000 in and get like 10,000 leads. Let's do it.
Yeah. One of my mentors, Tim Lyons, they ran a ad agency, and they ran an ad agency and they pumped people to that 21-day kickstart kind of thing. Sold it all online. Didn't charge the gym owner anything. They would just take whatever the client paid for the first 21 days. And dude, it was a 7-figure line item for them in their business in like 15, 16, 17. I mean, like, for real, it was clicking. But one thing I want to mention, I think when business owners, they think about marketing and stuff, they don't really, until you've experienced like what you just said, where it's 2 or 3 months down the road and you realize like, hey, I paid $200 to get this client, but their lifetime value, right, when you track all those things, is $10,000, right? So if you think of it at that aspect, I would give you $200 every minute, every second of the day for $10,000 in return. Even if I had to wait 2 years to get it. Now I understand, that's not all profits. You got to service it and all those things. I'm not talking about all those things, But that's how you got to look at it. I heard a gym owner just the other day. He was talking about like thinking of your marketing as a vending machine. You put in $1, you get $1.50 out.
Yep.
Right. You put in 2, you get 3 out. Right. And you have to look at it. And I know one of the numbers that you track is ROAS, return on ad spend. And I think that is the absolute best way to track the math of marketing. It's really the only way. You know, if you're running ads and stuff and people, especially your agencies, are talking to you about, oh, we get this cost per click or this and this.
Yeah, who cares?
That doesn't make you any money. You know, I would rather pay 10 times the amount for a click if I got a better quality lead and it led to a better return on ad spend, right?
Yeah. And one of the things, like I just now recently launched my ad division for my company because I was doing it for my business. And I was like, oh, I'm getting good ROAS. I can do it with someone else.
Right.
And I realized that other business owners just don't have the same mentality as me. So I have to rephrase the entire thing. Because I was doing like, okay, it's X amount per month. They're going to look at that and be like, I put in X amount this month and I didn't get anything back.
Yeah.
So it's done. Now I'm like, okay, no, we're doing a 6-month contract. You're paying for 6 months up front. And honestly, it's not that expensive. Like I think 6 months is like $5,000 for me to run ads. That's very cheap. Because I'm like, okay, if one client has an LTV of, 10 grand,
it's paid for.
There's your ROI.
It's paid for, right?
It's paid for.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's when you think of the math of marketing, when you think of return on ad spend, I mean, marketing can become free. You know, when I think of return on ad spend, I was like, how much money do you collect from that client in the first 30 days? And, if you're spending $3,000 and you're collecting $4,000, then that marketing didn't cost anything, right? It was free. So ramp it up. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right. And, I wish I could say I realized that, the first 10 years in business, maybe the first 11 years in business. I didn't, right? It took a long time to get that through my head. So I understand, like when you're talking to business owners now that don't have that experience, they've never dabbled in Facebook marketing or digital marketing. It's tough to grasp at first, but it's like that infinite banking or that IUL policy. I told you that first time I used it to flip a house, I was like, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
And you got to constantly remind them of the value too, and have that reassurance structure of like, and I'll explain to them like, guys, I will funnel these leads to you. You now need to call them.
Yeah.
Like it is just as much on you to work the living heck. And you can send them text all day, but the call is what really sells people. That's what I figured out now is that like your follow-up sequences are great. They can help, but you maybe get 1% that'll answer a text or an email. You get about 20 to 30 that'll answer a call because it's a phone.
Yeah.
People want to pick up the phone for you. So, I mean, I've had clients where I'm like, the ads aren't working. I'm like, have you called anybody? I'm like, no.
Yeah. We did exactly that for years, man. I remember back in probably 15 or 16, we were working with a social media marketing company, and they were bringing in leads, but we weren't getting any new clients. It felt like we were just throwing money out the door. And so we kind of gave up on Facebook ads. We really stopped doing them probably from 2017 all the way up until 2022. Really almost a 5-year period there where we didn't do it at all. And we joined the Iron Circle Mastermind I mentioned to you earlier and got around some of these guys. And, one of the things about masterminding that I know you really appreciate, and I know you spend time consuming information and getting around people that think bigger. But when you get around people that you saw 5 years ago that were doing the same thing you were, and now they're doing twice as much as you are, you're like, all right, if they can do it, I can do it. So the ceiling shatters. It's like the old Roger Bannister thing, it's like the 4-minute mile. It's like until he broke that, everybody thought it was impossible, right? But once he did, I can't remember the stats exactly, but like 10 or 12, 13, maybe 30 people did it in the next like year. So same thing with like the gym, like kind of ownership and marketing mentality is like, when we got around those people and saw what they were doing and realized, hey, they're Facebook marketing, right? But they're actually following up with those people, right? So we got leads before, but we were not great at following up. I'd call them one time. They didn't answer. They didn't want it. They weren't good lead. They were poor quality. You got to call them again. You got to call them again. You got to call them again. One of the things that we did, and I think there's probably some, it's definitely changed in the last 3 years, but when we first implemented this 3 years ago, it was super, super awesome. And it still is awesome, but it's AI has definitely slowed it down a little bit. But we we have a client lifecycle automation that sends out ringless voicemails, that sends out emails, that sends out text to follow up with every single client on top of us calling them as well, right? So we're going to get in touch with them some way, some form or fashion. And so you have to relentlessly follow up, right? They put their name into that inquiry list for a reason. They're asking for help. We know speed to lead is what wins the game. I mean, that's in every industry. So
yeah, I mean, I tell my team, it's like keep following up until they tell you they don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're like, great, you don't interested, you don't want it. But if someone, like you said, they showed interest, and I still get, even with my company, people who are like, I don't remember claiming this, and I'm like, okay, I mean, you got to push a button all the time.
Man, I've called leads that were sitting in a courtroom.
No, yeah.
I've called leads.
Like in a psych ward.
I'm like no, they're like, no, I didn't put my name into this. I'm like, well, somehow your name and number showed up on my Google sheet. So I didn't put it there. I don't know how I got there, but it's there. Can I sell you a gym membership? Have you ever worked with a personal trainer? Are you looking to change anything in your life?
Yeah.
Right. So no, I get that 100%.
It's always a fun conversation. And then there's the whole other word now of like being a salesperson, because gym owners and gym people are typically, it's like you have someone who's really passionate about the gym. They're not a business guy. They're just a guy passionate. They got a loan and they started a business, which is typically not how you want to start a business. You want to do some research and figure out your plan of attack. But with that being said, I totally forgot my train of thought.
We're talking about sales, and you were about to say, in the gym, you've got to
be a salesperson.
You got to be a salesperson. Yeah, you have to. You have to learn marketing. You have to learn sales. Right? If people don't know you're there, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're never going to be able to impact anybody's life. Right? So they got to find out about you. Right? So that's marketing. And then when they come in the door, right, you're providing them something that they need. It's not a sell. It's not a hard sell. It's right. It's just helping them get out of their own way to realize that, hey, this is what you're trying to get to. We have the map to get you there. Let's go. Right. So it doesn't have to be a hard sell. I think sales, we do sales every day in our life, right? You go to a restaurant and you love it. You tell your friends about it, right? That's selling. I'm married. I had to sell my wife that I was a good prospect, right?
Yes.
So you have to sell in every area of your life. But the difference is that when, especially in the fitness industry, in a relationship like industry like ours, is that when the sale closes, it's not done. It's just the beginning. Right? From there, you got to deliver, right? And I think when you have a product that you truly believe in and you value and you understand the value that you provide to people, you have no problem selling it.
It's always funny because especially today, there's a lot of sales courses, sales coaches, like everyone's always talking about sales, and like overcoming objections and like these really aggressive tactics. And I was on a call with someone because in my head, I was like, I will pay X amount of dollars for coaching. Like I'll talk to them like, dude, I'll pay you $1,000 for an hour of your time. Yeah, I'll do it. And I'm surprised by people who are like, I don't want to do that. My time's worth more than that. And then I do the math on how much they make a year, and I'm like, it's not worth more than that, but okay. I was like, all right, whatever. But in the call, it was just a really aggressive, like, not for me. If someone doesn't want to make a sale, okay. It's kind of like if I'm in a relationship, I don't want to have to force someone to want to be with me.
Right. Yeah.
You want them to want to have it. It's just a conversation discovering if you want this and holding them accountable, being like, for you, it's like, I hear that you want to get in shape. What would this mean for you? I'm like, well, X, Y, Z. It's like, do you care about that? I'm like, well, of course I do. It's like, I can give that to you. Like I've done it with 500 people. If you want it, I can give it. And at no point in that are you forcing them. You're like, dude, I'm pumped, or you're pumped. Let's just do it.
Yeah. I think people, when you understand somebody's why, whether that's in fitness, whether that's in business, when they're coming to you for marketing, why? Obviously they say they want to make more money, but why? Why do you want to make more money? Do you want to make more money so the stress is down, so you can afford a new house, a vacation, so you can take care of your kids better? And like breaking it down and like figuring out like what those whys are always makes it easier, I think, I don't want to say sell somebody, because that's not what it is, but help them get out of their way and let them know that, hey, you have, we've been working with you here at the podcast studio. I've been around you for the last, 6 months. I see what you do. I see the product and stuff that you produce. There's value to that, right? You change people's businesses. You really do. And when you change people's businesses, you change their livelihoods. right? You change their lifestyles, you change the way they support and show up for their family. I mean, it's powerful, powerful stuff. And I think a lot of times when it comes to sales, you know, in fitness, in our industry, like we impact lives. We change people's lives. So when somebody comes into the gym, I have no problem trying to sell them something because I know what we are capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very good point, because a lot of people ask me, like, what's the ROI of working with you with social media and all that stuff? And I'm like, okay, and I like working with higher ticket people, because lower ticket's always kind of harder to make the sale. But if like,
it is.
I had a conversation with somebody yesterday who owns a building company, and I was like, what's one lead, like one person who buys from you? Like, what's that worth? And they go, $500,000. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Working with me for an entire year is like, if I do everything, is maybe $50,000.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, going from not posting a single thing to posting every single day with targeted content, you get one person that buys.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I've never gone a year of my life without social media making a sale for me. So I'm like,
man, I mean, we are 2 months into a podcast, right? We kicked off our podcast October 1st, and we've had 4 people directly from the gym or come to our gym and sign up because of it. I really, you know, and I don't know if it's going to continue like that, but I mean, you know, when we first signed up, I was like, I'm going to give this 6 months, because I knew it took some time, and obviously now we're in, right? We're hooked.
Yeah.
We love it. But it was like, it's cool to see that already. So, you know, those 4 people have already paid for what it costs to come in here and do the podcast.
yeah. Well, and on that too, my brain goes, and this is where my little, you know, addiction personality comes in. I'm like, okay, if I do 2, what's 30 going to get me? I'm like, what's 50 going to get me?
Yeah.
And typically there's no cap. If you if you did a podcast every day, you would get more clients.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm doing my podcast. Is, I mean, at work, I've had people already DM me being like, hey dude, listen to your podcast, did this thing, like, want to talk to you about coaching or this other stuff. I'm like, oh, great.
Well, we live in a world where content is necessary to get attention. And this setup, man, when I first heard about it, it was like, it made perfect sense, right? It's polished content. It's setting down, doing things that we love, talking, right? And it doesn't feel like you're having to come in here and sit down just to make a 30-second video, right? Mm-hmm. We're creating these long form talking podcasts, and then you guys do such a awesome stinking job of creating these awesome short-term or short clips that people just love, right? Mm-hmm. And so you kill multiple birds with one stone. I mean, it's really a genius idea. I love it.
It keeps it fun. It's always a scale. And there's the whole other world too of, this is something that I'm kind of in my business now of like, okay, I could do everything myself and make more than I'm making now and have no life. Or I can keep scaling, make a little less in the short term, but then have an asset that runs itself. Mm-hmm. And then, but of course there's the headache of running an asset, which.
Yeah. I mean, business ownership, being an entrepreneur, I mean, there's always a stress that comes along with it. You know, I mean, we've been in business for 15 years. We have an incredible team that runs all the day-to-day operations. Still doesn't matter. There's still thoughts ruminating all the time. So even when you build a machine, you know, something that was your baby in the beginning, when we were doing everything 60, 70 hours a week, to the point that it is now, you know, you still have these thoughts, these what ifs, and all these, you know, you can't help but go through these worst case scenarios in your head. But I wouldn't change it for anything, because it's you know, when we first started a business, you know, the whole point of starting a business was to create almost a lifestyle design. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the coolest things that Matt and I did when we first started out, I always tell people about it, because especially in the fitness world, people get blown out of they just get their panties in a wad, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But our first 7 years of business, first 8 years in business, we didn't open until 9:30 in the morning, which is very unheard of in the fitness industry. But we realized that, hey, we're working from 9:30 to 8 o'clock at night, right? Neither one of us love getting up early. Mm-hmm. So we started this business. We're going to create it around. Now, as we got further into the business, 100% realized that was causing bottlenecks in growth. I get that. But when we first started out, we had to protect ourselves a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we were already working 12 hours a day. And, you know, I know you've been in fitness and been around fitness, probably know a lot of trainers. The normal trainer schedule is 5 a.m. in the morning to 9 a.m. in the morning, and then from 5 to 9 at night, right? That's a long stinking day and you can't get anything done. That destroys people. That's the reason I think the average in the industry is like less than 6 months because it just beats people to death. That was one of the things that when we created our business, we wanted to eliminate. We wanted to create an opportunity for coaches to come and have an actual career and work a normal shift, right? We have 6 to 2, 12 to 7:30. Like we have normal shifts. Like you come and work and do those things and you get paid when you're there, not just when you're training clients, when you're there. But I think as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, you're willing to do a lot of things on your own, but until this is a long-winded way to go back to you, whether you want to do it all yourself or if you want to scale. But you realize that in order to, especially when your goal is to impact as many people as you can in your community, like us with the fitness, but for you to help as many business owners, you're impacting their families as well. So for you to help as many business owners as you possibly can, you can't do it alone. You can't. So you got to find out like, hey, what are the things that Cameron is really, really good at? And that's where your time is. And then what are the things that bogs Cameron down, right? I'm going to guess, not knowing you super well, but I bet when you have to get into the nitty gritty, the spreadsheets and data analysts and all that stuff, that probably bogs you down and makes you exhausted. Whereas when you're creating content, when you're talking to people, when you're doing high scale, high level, like vision casting, I bet you get pumped up.
Yeah.
So that's where Cameron spends his time. And then you get good people on your team like you have with Austin and Ella that come in and fill in those areas where you're like, yeah, you can do them, right? It doesn't mean you can't do this stuff, but it's not your strength.
Yeah. Well, it's the highest ROI too. And even I always try to tell my team, like, guys, there's certain things I don't want you to do because this isn't a high leverage of your time. And like they've been doing stuff with clients. I'm like, guys, this isn't like there are bigger issues with this client than this small thing they want.
Right.
They might want it, but you got to educate them sometimes. Be like, I had an example where I'm like, the client really wanted a certain thumbnail. And I'm like, dude, I guarantee this thumbnail, because through my algorithm, it's not going to do as well. If you want it, I'll do it. But if you want the results, is what you want. You got to remind them what they want to and get on the same page. Because sometimes clients don't, oddly enough, want the best for themselves. They just want what they want.
Oh,
and you're like, okay.
No, I mean, that's, you got to trust the expert. I mean, there's a reason that, we've hired you. Right. And when it comes to that stuff, I'm not the expert. I'm not good at that stuff. I mean, my social media, we do a really good job at the gym, but my personal social media, I mean, it's a task, right? It really is. It's work for me. It doesn't come natural. It doesn't come natural to me. So like when you're creating thumbnails or short form clips for Instagram and stuff, the last thing I'm going to do is say, oh, I want it different. Like, you're the expert. There's a reason I've hired you. I'm going to trust your guidance. Yeah,
trusting your guidance is huge. I mean, there's one person right now I'm working with. He's a personal trainer. He's in the strongman space, and he's got to, like, when I started working with him, he's like $5K a month.
Yeah.
And now he's at like $15K.
Nice.
And now we're doing a business coaching agreement. So the first time I worked with him was just social media. So just social media took his business from $5 to $15K a month.
Killer.
And now he's like, dude, I really want to get to 20 and I just can't do it. And I was like, all right, we can do a coaching agreement. I'll tell you how I got to my spot. Because I'm very confident. I'm like, I know how to get to X amount of revenue a month. Yeah. I can do that. If you're making 10 million a month, I don't know if I can help you as much, but
sure,
we have a conversation. And I was like, okay, right now you're doing everything yourself. You outsource nothing. And I was like, what I would pitch is like, hey, how about you bring in some VAs or some people, make a little less money, but that'll get you, your 2025, and you'll have a lot more time.
Well, and I think that's the key right there. You just said it at the end. It's time, right? I mean, why for him? Why is it worth going to $20,000 if he just loses all of his time? I mean, I think that was the one thing with me. Like when we created our business, I did it because I wanted to be able to spend time with my family. I wanted to be there for my kids. I want to be there for their events, and I love this stuff. I get juiced up when it comes to fitness and nutrition. I love numbers. I love businesses, and I can easily go down rabbit holes and get sucked into it. But I've kind of created these guardrails around it so that I am there when it's time for dinner at night. I am there when the kids have these things. So I'm real, if there's something that I'm doing that I'm not great at, that's taking up a lot of time, I'm going to figure out a way to delegate, right? I mean, that's the reality of, business ownership. That's how you get a greater ROI on your time, is by doing the things that you possess as your strengths, and then finding out people that have your weaknesses that are their strengths and letting them run the show, and then not micromanaging them, right? You can't do that. If you hire somebody to do something, they need to do it. And if they're not showing up and they're not getting it done, then they're not the right person.
Yeah. You got to trust people.
Yep.
Something you said there that stuck out a little bit is the guardrails you have to set up for yourself. I feel like most entrepreneurs are trains with no off switch. They don't know how to, I'm not great at it. I know it's a weakness of mine. I do the Mr. Beast mentality of like, I work till I feel sick, and then I go splurge, and then I work till I feel sick again.
Yeah.
Because I love it. In my head, I don't see that much wrong with it. People are like, dude, you just can't do it. It's not sustainable. And I'm like, my brain's never been sustainable. It's been, I just love this thing. I got to do it. So how do you set up these guardrails to protect yourself versus the passion you have for everything?
Man, seasons of life, right? I don't want to even sit here and even pretend that I'm perfect at it by any means. But seasons of life, right? There's seasons that I know that I'm gonna press in and I'm gonna dive deep. And those seasons that you know, especially if you have a significant other, a wife, kids, things like that, you need to let them know, communicate. Like, hey, I've got this project going on. I'm gonna be a little like kind of out of it for a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. So when I get home, I'm probably gonna be a little more tired. I'm gonna be staying a little later, different things like that. But I always communicate those things. But the thing that really changed that for me was kids. Mm-hmm. It really was, right? When my kids were born, you know, when Aubrey was born in 2019, it was I guess it was about a year before COVID. Mm-hmm. But when she was born before that, I realized that, you know, getting home at 7:00 at night, every night was not going to cut it, right? Because when you got a newborn, I mean, they're sleeping 9/10 of the day, you know, so you want to be there to spend some time with them and stuff. And so kids allow that, you know. I try to shut it down pretty much. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm shooting text after, I'm still checking, I'm not perfect, you know, but I try to be home by about 5:30, 5:30 every afternoon.
Yeah.
Right? And there's some days that, you know, that I'm a little more flexible and a little more lax than that, right? Especially when things come up. But I'm always there. I always try to pencil in. I always schedule, you know, if they have events at school, you know, if they have like Christmas parties or Christmas, you know, not presentations, but the, what do they do on stage?
Like the shows?
Shows, yeah. Can't even think of what it's called right now. But when they have things like that, man, I always make sure they're in my schedule, and they trump it, right? And then the other thing for me, the big one for me is my sleep, right? I have to be very protective of my sleep, because when I don't sleep, I lose my ability to focus. I lose my ability to be creative and produce. So I've got to do that. But my natural tendency is, like, especially at night, like when the kids go to bed, if I get into stuff and start digging, right, wired. So I have to be really careful of that time. And, you know, I set pretty firm guardrails. Like, hey, 9:30, 10 o'clock comes around, whatever it is that night, I'm shutting the phone. I'm shutting the computer. I got to walk away.
Yeah, it's self-control, and it's always funny because Alex Mosey said a quote that was very true. He was like, personal trainers love saying people aren't disciplined when it comes to fitness. It's because they love it. If you love it, you're not disciplined, and it's doing the thing you don't want to do. Which is funny when people say, "Oh, it's like it's hard for me to not work."
Yeah,
like that is the hard part. And they're just like, "What do you mean?" Like, not constantly fixating on making everything better and optimizing it is what's really hard for me.
Yeah.
So that is how I show discipline. And yours is going to look different, but having that acknowledgement of like, this is the same level of hard is a good thing to, I think it's a good thing to have.
I tell you, one of the ways that I kind of created it and learned it was, I remember it was 2000, probably 2014-ish and stuff. And I'd went through a bad breakup with a girlfriend at the time. And I was like, and part of it was because of work. Part of it was because I was so distant and I was distracted and stuff, because I was always so focused on that. But I remember after coming out of that relationship, there were clients, older clients, families. Roger was one of them, Dennis Britt, and some of these guys that I looked at. They're successful in business. They have a great family life. They're showing up for their kids. And I started hanging out with those people. I wanted to see how they lived. I wanted to see how they operated. And I learned. I was a sponge, and I saw it and how they included their family. Like if there was business stuff, they would include them in it, right? Instead of making it two separate aspects of their life and different things like that. So I think getting around people, and again, mentorship, masterminding, I love it. I love to learn. That's my addiction, is learning. You know, sometimes to the point that I learn too much. It's probably a form of procrastination, right? Because sometimes it creates inaction, but I love it.
Well, we're right at an hour. What's give the audience and CTA to work with you, whatever offers you want.
Man, I think right now, just Results by Design Fitness, man, we help busy, hardworking moms, dads, in their 40s or 50s or 60s and 70s, live their best lives. We help them perform better, look better, feel better. Our tagline is "Don't let age steal your strength." Right? We want them to be able to show up for their families. So that would be the thing. If you're watching out there, if you're listening to Cameron's podcast, if you guys want to come and see what we have, come and see. I will offer for anyone that wants to comment VIP on your podcast here or any of these short form videos, a 30-day VIP pass to come experience what we have to offer. So that includes unlimited personal training for 30 days.
Nice. Yeah. Well, sweet. I appreciate being on.
Yeah. Thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it, man.